My name's Stewart Chapman and I set up Cornerstone Construction and Refurbishment Limited about 12 years ago. When I first started the business, it was just me on my own doing everything, and then from then on we've gradually grown over the last 10 years or so to a company employing about 10 people, doing a various number of roles and jobs and stuff around the city, from extensions to schools to private and commercial. And now finally we're on this big job in Hanley called the Portland Inn project, which we're refurbishing and turning into a community and arts centre. So I'm a joiner by trade, and I've worked in the joinery trade and the building trade since I left school, so 40 odd years in that industry and in that role. So kind of I've worked through all of the changes that have happened over the last kind of 30 to 40 years in the building industry. It's been interesting. It's starting off on your own, and it's a lot easier because you've only got one person to think about. You have enough work to do for one person, and you have enough, and it's so much easier. When you then employ eight or nine people, and two of those are family members as well, so it's a real family business. And then you have to think about getting enough work to keep those guys going, and it almost becomes a bigger challenge to manage people, which I'm not used to doing, and managing sites, which I've always managed sites, so that was the easy part. So we took part in the Rebuilders course. It's been an really interesting course, because most of my work is done in this kind of environment around us now. It's all plasterboard and insulation and stud work, but it's all a traditional way of doing it, so we've always built that way. And then when we did the course, there was a lot of work that was going to be done with sustainable materials. So as a result of that, we got involved in the Rebuilders course because they were looking at working retrofitting buildings with sustainable materials, which was very interesting. And a new area for us. To learn about that in the classroom was really good, because it was an eye-opener, the stuff that you can work with that's a lot better for our health, for the environment and all those kind of things. It is really hard to try and change what you're doing as a business. You can't change it overnight, because obviously you've got work that's going on, and you've then got specifications and all that kind of thing that are drawn up by architects. So it really is difficult just to change that. But the one that we've found is, if you speak to people about insulation, for example, is not to use rock wool or any of those kind of nasty things that kind of still let off all the fibres and everything that's going on. But on the internal walls, for example, where we're working here, on the internal walls and the floors, we're going to start using a hemp product that we can use for the acoustic value. A lot of the work that we do, we have building regs and stuff like that to conform to, and that makes it hard sometimes to use sustainable materials. But on floors and in petitions and stuff like that, it's a no-brainer. We can use insulations that are a lot better, and that's what we're trying to work with. And when we work with architects, we're talking about that, and then when we're looking at jobs, we're looking at, can we try and price that within our price structure that makes it, but then it still makes us competitive as well, if that makes sense. Sometimes you have to do what the client wants, and that's the problem with some people. They're all architects can be client-led. So if your client doesn't want to take that on board, then you're flogging a dead horse. Whereas sometimes if you talk to a client about it, we've had conversations with clients and they say, oh yeah, we'd like the idea of that, but it's always been a bit expensive. And then when you kind of talk to them about the good side of using sustainable materials such as insulation, because of you don't get the fibres left in the rooms, it's easy to work with. You can work with it and not have to get suited and booted and covered up with loads of masks and things. So you've got all that ammunition, all those statistics and stuff like that you can talk to, and the majority of them are on board. But it's always, as always with everything, it's always down to cost, isn't it, for the client. There is a demand there. I've been dealing with a company called Indie Nature to try and use some of their products on this this project we're doing at Portland End, because acoustic values, it's quite easy to get to. The floors are proving a little bit more difficult because you have two different kind of decibels that you have to reach for just like normal decibels for sound passing through. But because we're in flats, you have a stamped one as well, which means that sometimes it's a higher decibel, so it's difficult to get that. So you may have to use other different products to try and make that up. I mean, when I first started the process about 12 months ago, trying to find the sustainable materials for this place, it was difficult, and there were only a few people that were dealing with them, or you hadn't got a massive amount of products. It's a London thing, isn't it? In London, it's very popular, and it's very kind of, we'll do this and it makes them feel good stuff kind of thing. So as that kind of starts to creep up the rest of the country, then those sorts of things are going to be easier to get hold of. I think the good thing about when you look about clay plastering, or you look at lime plastering and stuff like that, it's not always perfectly smooth, is it? But with things like a standard plaster, like a normal thistle finish plaster or multi-finish or something like that, you've got to trowel it up to get it flat, and sometimes it takes longer and longer, and a lot longer to try and teach people. And if you make a mistake, it's not as easy to put right. Whereas one of these kind of clay plasters and the lime plaster, or putting a wood fibre board on and that kind of thing, those sorts of things you can teach people with limited skills as well to do some of that, and do that to a kind of reasonable standard. I think that's not belittling anything that plasterers do, because I used to plaster ceilings and walls, so I know how difficult that is. I suppose going back to right at the beginning, when we came to the open day last September, and listening to all the statistics and the talks that what damage we're doing to our environment and to this world by using plastic-based products, and products that aren't sustainable, and the impact that has on is still kind of one of those things that I found one of those stop trap moments, and that's still the reason why I still want to do all this, and doing it for the next generation, or the generation after, really. So it's kind of a long-term thing.